Hello friends, welcome back to the next session on operations planning, scheduling and control. Now let's begin with our learning. In this particular session, we'll be understanding and dealing with the concepts of implementing preventive maintenance. The learning objectives. At the end of this particular session, the learners will be able to understand what do we mean by preventive maintenance, explain how to implement the preventive maintenance in an organization, describe the various preventive management strategies or activities that have been undertaken. And lastly, list down the various preventive maintenance components. Now, let's begin with our learning. First, let's understand what do we mean by implementing the preventive maintenance. So, in case of a business organization or a manufacturing unit, the concept of TPM, that is total productive maintenance, has been undertaken in order to see that how all the activities have been done in a very well coordinated way, and every activity is been undertaken for the reduction of waste or optimum utilization of the resources. A time-based method involves scheduling a preventive maintenance task on a regular basis, such as every 10 days or every 10 or every specific period. Implementing of preventive maintenance is a part of a strategy or is a part of an activity which is being undertaken on a regular basis at a certain regular intervals. So for a business organization, we must always have a certain schedule, we must have a certain plan which focuses on every activity that needs to be undertaken for a regular basis, that is after a several point or a period of time. Other examples which includes doing the preventive maintenance, such as routine checkup of the important components on the first of the every month or every 3 months and so on. So when we say that certain activities that have been implemented in the business organization or a manufacturing unit for the regular upkeep maintenance or regular checkup of a certain activity, such type of activities are called as an implementing of preventive maintenance, wherein you may check a certain machinery, you may check a certain activity or a certain processes on a daily routine basis or on a fortnight basis, that is every 15 days, every month, or on every quarter, that is every 3 months. So implementation of such activities is called as the preventive maintenance. Now let's understand what the various procedures or activities that are being undertaken in terms of a preventive maintenance. So the preventive maintenance activities involves the first thing, replacing of the worn components before they fail. So before the particular component is been failing, we must always try to identify which are those worn components and how do we replace or how do we get those particular components repaired. Cleaning and restoring the components before the performance degrades. So we must always try to clean and restore the component. That is the proper upkeep maintenance of the machinery, cleaning of the machinery and the various places that have been there for the business organization or the manufacturing unit. It must be cleared, it must be clean and restored before the performance of that particular machinery or a particular activity gets degraded. So before the concept of a degradation, we must take various measures for its restoration and cleaning of those activities. The next procedure activity that can be performed is avoiding the consequences of components or a system failure. So we must always try to avoid what the various components of the system failure and what measures needs to be undertaken for avoidance of those considerations. So consequences of components or the system failure needs to be undertaken, and it must always focus on how do we control a certain consideration as to a part of a component or a certain system. So before a particular product or a particular machinery or a particular component fails, we must always have a proper systematic failure, and awareness of all those mechanisms must be in existence or must be in place. Improvements in reliability and predictability. So we must have a proper improvements in the reliability and predictability as to what measures can be undertaken and what are the various activities that needs to be performed for reduction in the failures, or how do we improve the reliability and predictability of a certain concern. We must have a proper predictions as to control on activities, proper better control on resources and composition of utilization and so on. And lastly, training the experts on proper procedures and techniques. So we must always train the various experts on conduction of various activities as to how do we need to conduct the various procedures, and the various tools and techniques can be applied in business organization. So those particular training of experts or procedures is essentially required, and accordingly those technique needs to be implemented, and the people must also be trained for those activities. Let us understand what we mean by the concept of preventive maintenance. So preventive maintenance is having a certain schedule and performing those particular schedule on a regular basis for the inspection of a certain equipment. So a particular equipment which needs a certain attention after a several point or several period, giving a proper importance or a certain inspection for those equipments is a part of scheduling and performing a regular inspection activity. And when this activity has been conducted on regular level, it is called as a part of preventive maintenance. The next perspective is conducting the regular cleaning and of buildings, grounds, and assets. So whatever assets that we have, whether it is a fixed assets, short-term assets, long-term assets, and so on, assets as a part of an buildings or a grounds and so on. We must have a regular and conduct. We must have a proper upkeep, maintenance, and cleaning of all those buildings, grounds, and assets. So that is the concept of preventing maintenance as a part of a certain example. Lubricating the moving parts to reduce the wear and tear. So whatever the moving parts that have been associated, we must lubricate it. A proper fabrication, a proper lubrication, or a servicing of those equipments, machines needs to be undertaken in order to see that the wear and tear does not cause a certain impact and the upkeep maintenance increase or improves their life period for operational activities. Adjusting the controls for optimal performance and energy efficiency. So we must always have an optimal performance and operational energy efficiency for the goods, services, and machinery that has been used. So we must also have a proper control on adjustments of the time, the machinery, the level of goods and services that have been used, the speed, time, and distance of a particular machinery, the usage of power and cleanliness, and so on. And lastly, repairs and replace any defective equipments which are of a certain particular nature. So if a certain repairs and renewals have been required, a certain replacement activity needs to be undertaken, or any part is found to be defective, then such equipment must be replaced and repaired very immediately, and all those defects must be removed. So for a better preventive upkeep maintenance, so all these particular type of activities can be undertaken, and we can have a better manufacturing, production, or servicing activity. Now let's understand what are the various benefits from implementing a preventive maintenance. The first benefit of preventive maintenance is strengthening the asset's lifespan. So the life of or the lifespan of a particular asset or the energy of a particular life of a particular asset gets increased and it lengthens or it strengthens. So it always helps to increase or develop the life of a particular assets if when we have a proper preventive maintenance. The next consideration is lowering the risk of the breakdown. So whatever breakdowns that can be arise at a certain level, that is after a frequent period, that is 10 days, 20 days, 1 month, and so on, the risk of the breakdown has been minimized, it has been lowered, and accordingly, the machinery continuously works on at every frequent level, and there is no breakdowns of those machineries. The next benefits of implementing the preventive maintenance is decreased unplanned downtime. So whatever downtime that we have identified, that is after a several point or a certain level, the machinery may have a certain downtime. So in order to decrease that particular downtime, we may have a planned or a series of activities, and accordingly from those consideration, the unplanned or planned activities can be identified, and on those particular basis, we may reduce the downtime of a certain machine. So in order to reduce the downtime, we must have a proper planning of activities, and even we have a proper effective consideration of the preventive maintenance, we can reduce the unplanned downtime, and the machine or the particular assets can work for a continuous or a continual or ongoing basis. So reduction of unplanned downtime is easily possible with the help of having a proper implementation of preventive maintenance. The next benefit from preventive maintenance is boosting the customer satisfaction. The customer satisfaction get boosted simultaneously because we can have a better quality products. The machinery is also being working at a very effective level. The quantity of supply of materials resources is continuously, and when the machinery is working continuously without any breakdown, without any downtime, without any increase with an increased lifespan, the product that is being produced is also qualitative, and at the simultaneous level, the goods and service that we are manufacturing are also at the greater extent. So we always strive or we always have a certain aim for delivering the goods and services at the specific time period, and when the customer are being delivered of a certain product which is more qualitative and within a specific time period, then satisfaction level of the customers gets boosted simultaneously. Now let's understand what is the life cycle of a preventive maintenance. The life cycle of a preventive maintenance is being undertaken at various stages or at various steps. The first step in the preventive maintenance life cycle is initiating the process group. So we must have a process group which is into existence, and we must initiate a certain activity as to how those activities can be conducted in a certain process group. So initiation or implementation of a certain process group is necessary and it is required. The second step that needs to be undertaken is planning a certain process group. So when we initiate a certain process group, we must have a certain plan as to how those activities needs to be conducted, how a well-series plan of activities as to the movement of material, goods, and services from one level to another level can be undertaken, and how those activities can be planned at a certain considerable level. So planning of the process group activities is essentially important, and how those activities can be undertaken. The next life cycle event or activity is executing the process group. So here in this case, we need to have a proper execution, a plan of series of activities, and how do we execute the process groups activities in a business organization. So execution of the process groups is essentially necessary, and how do we implement or how do we execute all those activities or steps that needs to be undertaken for the preventive maintenance. The next consideration or the life cycle activity that has been undertaken is monitoring and controlling. So when we have a certain plan and when the execution of those particular process group activities have been undertaken, we must have a proper mechanism for the control and monitoring as to whether the activities have been undertaken, whether the machine is working, whether the process have been followed as per the planned activities or the series, and whether they are performing as per our expectations or not. So hence, monitoring and control of the activities as to what we have implemented, what we have executed, needs to be undertaken and taken into consideration and account. And on those particular basis, monitoring and control needs to be on a continuous basis. And the last step of the procedure is closing the process group. So accordingly, when all the activities have been completed, we must always close the process groups and we must identify as to what are the end results of those particular activities. So closing of the process groups is essentially important, and accordingly, on those particular basis, we must have a certain analysis as to its completion. Now let's understand what are the 5 steps to implement a preventive maintenance program. The 5 steps to implement a process, implementing a preventive maintenance program are: number one is the first, knowing the numbers. So we must know the numbers as to how many and what number of activities are being needed to undertaken. Second thing is involving the key stakeholders. So who are the various key stakeholders of the participants who have been required to get participated in the preventive maintenance program. So identification of key stakeholders is really important. Establishing a system to identify the tags and tracking the requirements. So we need to identify what are the various tags, what are the various important considerations that we need to undertake, and how do we track each and every equipment activity and level of activity that needs to be undertaken in a business organization. Keeping the track of time. So how all those activities can be undertaken in a very specified or a sequence way, and in what level or in what consideration each and every activity will be completed. So keeping a track record of time is also essentially and simultaneously important. The next perspective is the concept of continuous improvement. So the concept of Kaizen is also essentially important, wherein we must always aim to see that how a continuous improvement activities have been implemented, and the preventive maintenance program is also been taken on a continuous level. Now let's understand what are the various types of preventive maintenance. The various types of preventive maintenance are time-based maintenance, usage-based maintenance, predictive maintenance, prescriptive maintenance, hospitality and restaurant industry-based maintenance, manufacturing industry maintenance, fleet management industry, and oil and gas. So these are the various types of preventive maintenance which can be implemented in a manufacturing or in the operational unit or at various industries or certain sectors. So defining the each piece of equipment's plan and preventive maintenance or duties are at the considered level and at the appointed time to preventive maintenance. So what we need to do is we need to have a equipment's plan and activities, and accordingly on those particular basis, the maintenance duties needs to be undertaken. Calculating the proportion of jobs completed within the allocated time, informing your teams as to the outcomes of any preventive maintenance and initiatives that have been completed is essentially necessary in terms of preventive maintenance. And from those particular perspectives, the preventive maintenance needs to be undertaken. Now let's summarize what we have learned in this particular session. In this particular session, we have understood what do we mean by implementing the preventive maintenance, what are the various activities that have been undertaken in case of an implementing of preventive maintenance, and how do we implement the preventive maintenance strategies in the business organization. I hope you must have enjoyed the learning in this particular session. We'll stay connected and we'll continue with our learning. Thank you so much for your patience listening. Thank you.